Welcome to Western Technical College Business and Industry Services. This video, along with other training opportunities from Western BIS, are designed to help employees stay informed on the latest trends in today's changing workplace. To learn how Western can support your business, visit us at westerntc.edu/BIS.
So let's get started. It is 11:30 and we are today going to discuss some stress and time management ideas for the holiday season and beyond. I wanted to kind of full disclosure. I'm probably going to talk more about the stress and not so much specifically about time management, although it'll be kind of incorporated in the things that we talk about. Um, I do I like doing these. I wish that we could interact more. It's such a short amount of time, so we don't have a lot of time in terms of speaking back and forth. But I definitely like to use chat. I'll do my best, and then maybe Angie can help me as well with chat, just because I do like it to be interactive. Because I always believe that we can definitely learn from each other, and I certainly want to say that. I'm not coming to this as somebody who has all the answers and who has a perfect Norman Rockwell family. I probably have some life experiences. That's maybe why I feel like I can speak to the topic. So, I, again, want to welcome you to the session. My name is Ann Brando, and I'm Director of Counseling and Case Management at Western. So, I do want to say for the Western folks that have joined in, I see this as really tied to our trauma informed work, because this is an example of having voice and choice. So when you think about, you have a lot of choice in this, although sometimes it doesn't feel like it. When we get into holiday season, it seems like some of the things, the self-care or kind of how we view the world and how things work kind of goes out the window. So I'm going to ask you to think about, maybe even write that down if you have something to write about or write with, is voice and choice, and being intentional about that as we move forward. I like to think about, I'm a really reflective person. I like to think kind of in my mind's eye. When I think back of the holiday season, what comes to my mind? And I just want you to take a moment to think about that. Um, when you recall the holidays, what conjures up in your mind? Is it really positive things? Do you remember that most fantastic gift that you received, or that you loved your cousins coming over? Or, what is it that comes to your mind when you think of the holidays? Or is it the stress? Um, Today, I'm going to kind of assume that the reason you maybe came onto this session is maybe it's when you conjure up notions, they maybe aren't all positive. Or you're like, 2 years ago is just enmeshed in my head and I can't get it out of my head. It was just horrible what happened. So I'm going to make an assumption for this kind of case scenario or our time today that you're maybe here hoping to find some strategies, or hoping that maybe we can look at other ways of viewing the holiday season. So, what we want to talk about is kind of reality of what holiday seasons are. They can be fantastic, and granted, this year because of everything, it's going to be different for many of us. But we want to kind of put ourselves in a realistic state of what can we expect, because I kind of feel like if I go into my education setting mind, it's kind of like preparing for a test, right? So we usually have less anxiety when we think through what's going to be on the test, what we can expect, kind of what the setting's going to be. We're going to try to do the same when it comes to family. And I also want to, I also know that this year is going to be probably different for many of you, so we'll talk through some of those things as well. So again, I hope to nail it with as many of you as I can, but I don't know all of your family situations. Maybe you're here for a friend. I always say asking for a friend, because they're having some family issues, but maybe this is you. Oopsie, not this. I've got my screen here. Let's see. Um, Maybe you're one of these people or not. Maybe you're, I always love these awkward family pictures. I'm always like worried that this could potentially be my family someday, that I'm like, oh gosh, why did we decide to take that picture? But um, Maybe you're the person over here, the ostracized person that you feel like I don't belong. I've never belonged. And I hate the holiday season because it just brings up all those feelings of I don't fit with this family or the discussions. That can be, that's not that uncommon. Sometimes you feel like, oh dear, I'm in the middle of this too much love triangle. There's just too much love. And I don't know really how to navigate that either. So, again, I'm sensing that you're here because we're looking at like how can I navigate this thing called family, who I'm supposed to, or there's a lot of shoulds around what I should feel or I should do, and just kind of thinking about that and trying to figure out like where's the space where you have choice and you get to decide. So I want to let's just move through maybe some strategies of how we can gain some control over this thing that we call the holidays. So, if any of you have been to any of the self care sessions that I have worked on this last few months with Casey Meehan, um, typically my go to is this, and I'm a counselor by training. So, I feel like first take care of you. And I go back to the old, the airplane model where you put your adult face mask on first before you help that of children. It really applies to this situation. Is we can't give something that we don't have. And depending on your role in the family, and when it comes to the holiday, there's a good chance that things ramp up for you. That maybe you feel like you've got more work to do, you've got more grocery lists or more responsibilities. You got to coordinate like these people coming or they're not coming, or more conversations with people that maybe you don't really want to have, whether you're saying we're not going to be coming or they are coming and you're trying to figure out like how is that going to go and how am I going to navigate that. I think one of the best strategies to do is to double down on yourself, meaning prioritizing activities that recharge you, that energize you, or renew you, because it's more likely that you're going to be giving to others. Now, I don't know everybody that's on this call. I recognize some of your names. Um, Typically in education or in service type of occupations, we're givers, right? We're giving all the time. So I think with holiday season, we have to even be more mindful of, okay, now are we going to even be giving more? And this may be your perfect opportunity to say, you know what, I've given this term, for example, at Western, it's just taken a lot out of me personally. I've been giving and I love to give, but I think for Thanksgiving, I'm going to take a step back. So being intentional about what are you doing if you're a mother, a sister, a brother, a son, or whatever role you play in this holiday season and in your life, um, how are you intentionally taking care of you? And that's what I'd like you to think about. I'm going to talk a little bit more, but in the chat, if you don't mind sharing what recharges you, and if you are intentional about this holiday season, what do you kind of say, you know what, I'm going to double down on this. I absolutely know I have to commit to this. So what what can you identify that really recharges you? It means like when you're done with that, you're like, wow, I feel like I got a lot to give people now. I can be more present. I can hear their stories. So again, like what recharges you? So let's start with that in the chat, if you would, because other people can kind of learn from maybe the things that you're doing as well. Um, the downside of if we don't take care of ourselves first, what often happens is we end up feeling overwhelmed, resentful, or exhausted. It's kind of like, you know what, I've done all this stuff for you. I have made all this food. I made all these arrangements. And what do I get for it? That's what can happen if we're not filling our bucket. I see that Barb LaRue is on here. I talk about like, being people that fill your bucket. And she kind of helped me with a phrase called, or couple words called bucket dippers. Because we do. The reality is when you're with different people, you can have people that are bucket dippers. And so I'm seeing a few things in our chat here. Um, Doing things for others. I love that, Bobby, is we're going to get to that and kind of like leaning into others that maybe need us. Making sure you get plenty of rest and taking the time to exercise. Perfect. Walking outside, the fresh air, watching my birds. All right, Carolyn, you're still in your birds. I love that. brief recharge. My mom always said, when you're out holiday shopping, take a little extra cash to treat yourself. I love that. It's great. The shopping would not be recharging for me, but the extra cash would be fantastic. So, yeah, I think turn my bucket over at home and minimize input from news and others. I love that. Being intentional about what comes in terms of social media, in terms of news. Yes, very smart, Barb. If I don't get enough sleep, I can't think straight. My mom would always say that too. She always say, you got to have sleep to get your bearings. I think that's really important. So again, like thinking through these things and being intentional about putting them on your calendar. A lot of us have like Outlook calendars. Put this on your calendar too, to say, you know what, I'm going to take that walking break. It's not that you're not being selfish. Taking care of yourself is not being selfish. It's necessary, especially during the holidays. So again, kind of when I talked about planning, whether it's a test, um, prepare for behaviors, conversations, and interactions. I think this is one of the best strategies. And again, I know that some of you are going to be alone intentionally. Some of you are going to be alone for the first time. So there's definitely loss and there's a lot that goes into that. But really, when you're thinking about family and bringing people together, this is a time to prepare for some conflict. Most of us, again, I'm assuming if you're in on this Zoom call, you're like, I'm here because I'm like, things don't go perfect. And so it's kind of having that realistic sense of, we maybe conjure up the notion of a Norman Rockwell painting, like, oh, we're all here and it's so great. But we typically have somebody, hopefully it's not us, that you have people that just, rile you up. Or perhaps you have, for example, the brother-in-law who always wants to talk about whatever, and you fill in the blank. Maybe it's politics, maybe it's religion, maybe it's your hair is too long. Why are your kids acting this way? So I think it's finding ways to distract people or to anticipate those conversations. I was reading before this presentation, like be like Teflon. And I hate Teflon, by the way, but I think in this example, it really lands with me that it's like, let things roll off your back, that it's, and just don't take it personally. It's preparing, like, you know what, I know when I walk in the house, that person is going to say that. I know that because they do every single time. And so some of the strategies are just in your mind's eye. Again, think through past, maybe it's just last year or in the past few years, the things that have been said that really kind of derail you or get you upset or offend you, that have a potential to just make that setting not fun. And think through, like, what could you say to that, because there's a good chance it's going to happen again. So I tend to talk with people, even in counseling sessions, like, what's your tagline? Like, what's your way to escape from that conversation, so to speak? So if you know that somebody's going to say something about, oh, I can see that you're still, a healthy eater, or like people tend to say things about your weight or your job or the way you parent, or just like that kind of rude comment. Figure out what you're going to say in advance and practice that in your mind's eye. See, role play basically, even with yourself, to how you can control your responses, or just simply laugh and just say, well, some things never change, and walk away. um, I find I tend to like to do things when I'm in a stressful family situation. I tend to go, you know what, I'll help wash the dishes, which I don't really mind the washing the dishes anyway, but it gets me away from the conversation. I tend to not stay at the kitchen table when I know that, like, this group is going to start going down this. I don't want to be part of that. So I will, like, sometimes go with the children. I'll read a book to the little one, or I'll say, hey, I'll start cleaning up dishes. I make myself scarce. I think that's, again, a way to prepare. If you can leave some of those conversations, just get away from it, or again, distract. So the other thing is, I have what I call a pro tip. Um, Let family members talk to family members. I just have found it's never really a great idea for in-laws to talk to in-laws. So, like, if it's your husband's family, let your husband talk to your husband's family, especially in in holiday situations, this isn't really the time or space to resolve issues. So kind of going at planning like, I'm just going to get through it. Sometimes it's just that. It's like, I got 2 hours, I can do this. Next, not all of us have a Tom Cruise in our family. Maybe you do. I'm an 80s girl. I can't help myself. Um, but I think it's a great strategy to have a wingman or a wing woman, whoever that is. And by this, I mean, when you're going into these family situations, like who's your person that you would discuss this with beforehand? So you don't necessarily do it in the moment. I think it's a good idea to take this person aside, before Thanksgiving and just say, I'm just going to own the fact that when I get around this person, I get really anxious, or my worldview, it's just different. I'm very respectful of them, but I don't always feel like I get the respect back from them. So can you kind of be my wingman or wing woman? And that way, it's like if they come around me, can you just be intentional that you come over and stand? Because usually they don't say the same things when you're there. Or can you just have my back? If they do say something, can you be somebody that go, hey, that's not very nice? Or like, I thought we were here to have fun, or that can diffuse it for me because I know it triggers me. So, and again, I think it's thinking through who are those people that tend to trigger or that kind of want to give you a jab. Who are they, and how can you avoid them or have a wingman? I find for myself, this is a strategy that I used back in the day. And what it was for me is I had littler kids, and everybody else at my husband's family didn't. Nobody had kids. So when I would come there, I felt like it was a spectacle. Everybody was commenting on, oh, your child did this and they did that. And in hindsight, like now that I'm older, my kids are older, it wasn't bad, but I found myself getting really, really tense, and I didn't enjoy it. So I found that the next year, what I just said to my partners, I said, I just need help. I need you to tackle those things with your family and just say, just address it so that I don't have to. And it worked out a lot better. So thinking of yourself, who's your wing person, your wing man or your wing woman? Do you have somebody that, and maybe you want to chat about that? Who have you found that in your life, like, here's my go-to person? Or have you done that before and has it worked? Because to me, that's probably my favorite strategy. And in terms of um, the holiday season and survival. The next concept is boundaries on steroids. So learning to say no. Um, yes, the holidays are great with family. I think, again, the notions that we conjure up in our head, but um, is deciding, I think this year is really one of these where boundaries is going to be even more important. And you've probably had some of these conversations already with Thanksgiving. Other holidays tend to be even more kind of like, can inflame families if you do something that that other people don't agree with. So I think sometimes Thanksgiving maybe is, again, your first holiday to think this through, but deciding whether you want to stay away. I think that's something that a lot of people are facing right now, and asking yourself questions. And this isn't necessarily related to COVID. This could be related to just you yourself. Is is my mental health solid enough to handle this situation? And I think that's a very fair question, and one that we probably don't give ourselves enough, like, that we really can choose that. You can choose to say, you know what, I respect my family. I feel like they're good people, but right now, because again, I'm a giver and I've been giving all term or in my job, it's just been really stressful. I just can't do it right now. And that's okay. In fact, that's really good self care. Um, Also thinking, is it worth a potential COVID exposure? And I know that there are lots of different philosophies on this. Obviously, we see this, but it's okay to say, for me, and to use those I statements with your family to say, for me, really, I thought about it a lot. I just don't feel comfortable gathering for the holidays this year. You do what works for you. It just doesn't feel like the right choice for me. I'm not saying that everybody's going to love those conversations or they're even going to agree with you, but I do think this is an opportunity for you to choose you and what makes you feel safe and works for you. Um, what another question just to kind of consider is, what is your current level of stress? And do you need downtime? Again, I think it's okay to just be honest with people and say, I absolutely love next year. It's going to be different, but this year, I really feel like I'm not going to be good for anybody. I feel like I actually want to be alone, or I want to be with my immediate family and not travel. And I can't. I'm like, I'm done for a while. I think that's absolutely okay. And that's finding your best self, whatever that is. And this year it might be a little bit different. Um, Another thing is, do you really feel better after you attend some of these family functions? And I'm going to get to that in the next slide. But sometimes, again, we should on ourselves a lot. Like, I should do that. That'll make them happy. We're doing a lot for a lot of other people. But at the end of the day, sometimes in our mind's eye, we feel like, oh, I have to do that, or that's the right thing to do. But when we think about it, we're like, that was not fun at all. Probably maybe for them, but certainly not for you. So it's really okay to have personal limits and boundaries. You have a lot of choice if you let yourself. You're an adult, you get to decide. And I think you're also modeling really good um, um, concepts and choices if you have children or people around you to say, you know what, it's kind of giving to everybody around you can be overrated and it can be very unhealthy. So this is a good way to model to them that, like, we can absolutely love each other and love our families, but we have to make choices sometimes that work for us. So I always think, like, modeling, what are you telling people around you um, in these moments too? So again, I think you can choose not to attend this year. Kind of COVID gives us sometimes a free pass that we maybe didn't have, that we can say, I just don't feel comfortable this year. And that's okay. The other thing is, if you decide to attend, if it's a smaller function, or again, there's no judgment from you do what you have to do or want to do. But it's knowing and thinking through those limitations, thinking again back to previous years and pinpointing how much togetherness you and your family maybe want. I know for me, like when I had little children, I just knew that there was times that they needed naps. If I went during that time, it wasn't going to be fun for anybody. So I a lot of times would drive my own car. I would limit the time. If it went well, I had no problem staying longer. But if it didn't, I had an exit plan. And I think those are things too that you can control. You don't even have to tell anybody, maybe your partner, or if you have a partner, or just you can internally say, I'm going to give it a shot for an hour and a half, but I have an exit plan if I need that. So again, it's okay to set limits, and actually you'll be healthier for it.
And I'll just chime in real quick. We did
Sure.
have a comment come in, that just really validates a lot of what you're saying. This was a huge accomplishment for me. Say no without guilt, without trying to make up for it to certain maybe whiners later. No comes with self-value and self-respect.
That is Thank you, Annie. You said it a whole lot better than I did, but I absolutely agree. And that goes right into our next slide. I think, most of us are good Midwesterners, and we're like, we take care of everybody else, sometimes not ourselves. So that's kind of what I'm trying to, and I struggle with this myself. So I don't want you to feel like, oh, Anne's very, just telling everybody, no, I can't do that. It's hard. It's something but I have the Annies in my life that I feel know me and know that if I'm choosing me, they know that that's what I need to do. And they're certainly not shaming me or feeling like, wow, she just is so self-centered. It's not about that. It's about having healthy boundaries. So thank you, Annie. That really goes into our next slide as well. I found this yesterday and I thought it really is telling, like, living authentically trumps all shoulds. I think most of the time when if I'm in a counseling situation or just myself, it's we do a lot of shoulding. I should have done that. I let that person down. I should have been this. I should have that. And I think the holidays, it's okay to really do a self inventory and say, this whole holiday thing, I think COVID gives us an opportunity to say what I should do versus what I want to do, because I think you would find a lot of misalignment. Um, and and here's another choice, right? That we can say, um, I'm doing a lot of things I feel like I should do, but I don't really want to do. And maybe that triggers for you, like why you're not really excited about the holidays coming up. And it's like, this isn't that much fun. Well, it would make sense if you have a whole list of shoulds and you don't have anything that you want to do. Because I mean, I think that's the disconnect. So that's something to think about if you are like, what are the shoulds? I think sometimes we think, the should is I should invite all these people over, or I always made 10 dozen cookies and all the cutout cookies. I should do that because the kids really like those. Or everybody likes gifts. So I should be getting everybody 8 gifts because that's what I always did. This is an opportunity for you to say, what do you really want to do? Does that fulfill you? Does that fulfill the people that you're doing it for? Because this is your opportunity to say, you know what, I actually feel like I could be better and be more present with people for myself if I, instead of writing handwritten cards, which I love to do, but it's exhausting after a while, maybe I'll write a Christmas letter and send that out because that takes a lot. So it's a shortcut, but you're doing kind of the same thing, but taking care of yourself. Maybe I'll make 2 dozen cookies and I'll buy my cutout cookies from Festival. I don't have to make cutout cookies and everyone will survive. Yes, they will say, gosh, mom, yours are so much better. Yep, they were, but I'm not doing it. It's okay. So your should versus want chart is a strategy that you could think of. So what's one thing in the chat that you think you could scale back on? Or maybe just drop. You're like, you know what? I could just drop that like a hot potato. What would that be? Does anybody have any ideas about something you could scale down or drop? And Lori is saying some of you have family members in the hospital with COVID, and it's real. Exactly. I thank you for pointing that out. That you're right. Like some of us are still like wondering, like, should we get together? And others of you are like, no, we're in the thick of it. And you're just praying that people are going to be around. And these are such little problems, aren't they? When you consider that context, Lori, if again, this is like matter of life and death for certain families. So really, these things that we're really worried about, in perspective, doesn't matter. Gift giving, that's something that people said you can scale back or dropping. Oh, amen. Yes. Festival heat and serve Thanksgiving dinner was the best thing I ever did. Angie, I love that idea. I live an hour from there, but otherwise that sounds amazing. The amount of food I prepared, that's a great one. How clean my house is, exactly, Carolyn. Probably if they wanted perfectly clean house, I'm like, get after it, I'm happy to have help. I love it. These are really, they seem like like they make a huge difference. Just like you say, the amount of food, we don't have to have everything that you've always had forever. These are a great example. The amount of gifts I give, have to give to do many people. We, about 5 years ago, decided with our children, well, they were the grandchildren of our families, that we weren't going to give gifts anymore because we were running around and it's too much. What we found is we decorated Christmas cookies instead because it was a distraction. It took us 2 hours to decorate all those cookies. The kids never asked about the gifts, and we were like, why didn't we do this like 25 years before? Because again, it was so much better. And we taught our kids too, it's not about the gifts really, it's about us being together. Can't wait to just relax. Decorating. My house doesn't need to look like a Hallmark movie. Oh, Brett, amen. Mine never did, but yes, exactly. I'm eating pie from Western. Awesome. Oh gosh, I love this. Caramel corn. That seems like a great idea for a family of 8. Love it. All the traveling to multiple celebrations. You can decrease or give that up. Something we do for gifts, something you want, something you need, something you wear, something you read. Oh, cool new tradition I learned from Pinterest. See, this is a great group. Yes, takeout, awesome. Not cooking. This is where it's at. Is instead of shooting yourself to death and shooting all over yourself, just do the self-care, and you're on to it exactly what it is, because that's really typically where the true meaning is. This you're nailing it. You got this down. So this leads right into my next screen, is acknowledge the loss. I think we do have to, we have to realize this year is really different. I think when you acknowledge that it's different and you validate, you feel like this is going to be like no Thanksgiving we've ever had. it becomes less overwhelming and you're more in control of it because you're not blindsided by those emotions that you're like, you're owning it and you're saying, yes, it is a loss. And I wish it were different. I wish I could be there with my grandma. I wish they weren't in the hospital. I wish we didn't have the stress. It's absolutely normal. It's to be anticipated that you have that. With that, we can also have a mindset that we can start some new traditions. So we can have new menus. Some of you are talking about this. Like we can say, we don't have to have turkey. We could, or maybe the kids are part of the baking process. That's easy for me to say now that my kids are grown. That was kind of stressful back in the day. Grandmas tend to like that. Seems like better than the moms and dads. Maybe you can eat it at a new time of the day. Others have talked of maybe you focus in on the needs of others and gratitude. We talked a lot about kind of interactions with people. We never want to forget that those are there. There are some people, especially now with COVID and before, not because of COVID, that are alone. And so this is a good time to remember, think of people around us in our workplaces that are maybe alone to say, what, they don't, maybe they wish they had these dilemmas. They don't because they don't have people that are close to them in their lives. So maybe reaching out and leaning into them. I think that's really important as well. Maybe having activities that distract and engage people different. I think your kids will follow whatever lead you propose. So if you're like, this is what we're doing for Thanksgiving. We used to watch football. Now we're going to go do this. They will follow your lead. Some people talk about like planning for future trips. Maybe we can't go right now, but maybe you take the time to say, this is what we're going to do, next summer when we can actually go. And also, I think the last thing is celebrating with people other than family. It'd be great if all of us had the perfect family situations and it all was just good all the time. But sometimes you can actually choose friends that are easier for you maybe to navigate than family. And that's okay too. There's just so many right answers in this. This is actually my final slide. Is I said this, I want to have one famous quote in my life. And I've said this for a number of years, but I try to look at things like in the big picture of life, is it really going to matter? I think remembering that these are like a few days on the calendar that we have expectations, and I get that. But if you just think, oopsie, well, that's my timer, is to say, do your best to just remember that after the day on the calendar, usually these feelings dissipate, that it wasn't as big of a deal. Like if we don't go to grandma's, it'll be fine. In the big picture of life, this will be a blip in your life. Yes, COVID has changed a lot of things, but we're going to get through this and we're going to find different ways to be and to kind of move forward. So with that, I am right at time, but my timer went off. So thank you for attending. I hope that there's just things that hopefully validate you or maybe give you some reflection of things that you can change or control differently. So thanks a lot for attending, and I hope you have a great holiday season.
Thank you for viewing this video from Western Technical College Business and Industry Services. Learn more about the hundreds of training and development opportunities available for your employees at westerntc.edu/BIS.